Namaste. Amen, and blessed be. As we continue our exploration of freedom today, I want to talk about freedom of a different type. It's not political freedom or religious freedom. This morning, I want to talk about the freedom that we all need to be wild. This morning, we recognize the animal that is in each one of us, the part of us that doesn't respond well to boxes and rules, the part that needs quite a bit of space and time to roam and to breathe fresh air and to play and to howl at the moon if necessary. Now, here's my disclaimer. Not everyone is into nature and wilderness. Some people have a strong aversion to leaving their human-constructed environment. If you're one of those people, it's okay. I'm not trying to turn you into a backpacking hippie. This isn't a sales pitch, but I encourage you to listen as an opportunity to understand what calls other people to journey into the wilderness. Now, the person I think who best understood this human need for wild space was John Muir. The centering thought that's printed on the order of service is a quote from him. It says, "Few places in this world are more dangerous than home. Fear not, therefore, and try the mountain passes. They will kill care, save you from deadly apathy, set you free, and call forth every faculty into vigorous, enthusiastic action. Even the sick should try these so-called dangerous passes, because for every unfortunate that they kill, they cure 1,000. I first heard that quote from John Muir in a documentary film about a group of artist friends who were traveling the John Muir Trail. Now, that's a 211-mile journey through the mountains. It's beautiful, but it's incredibly trying on the body and the spirit. The movie was peppered with John Muir quotes, but this was the one that I thought by far captured their adventure, their challenge, and their growth as friends and as individuals over the time. Even the sick should try these so-called dangerous mountain passes, because for every unfortunate they kill, they cure 1,000. Now, it's not just the John Muir Trail that has the power to cure us, but wilderness everywhere. Our salvation is where the wild things are. I believe our salvation is in the opportunity to live fully and deeply beyond the cages of propriety and schedules. Our salvation is where the wild things are, out there in the wilderness and in the depths of our hearts. I don't know how many times my poor parents read that book to me as a child, but Where the Wild Things Are was the go-to for two little boys when they didn't want to go to bed. I was shocked when I read it again this week and saw how incredibly simple it is. I think my memories of it really changed a few years ago when I saw the movie that was based on the book. I saw it in a theater and loved it and wanted to recapture it, so I saw it again this week, and it definitely held up. And I'll admit, it is a strange little movie. It's an amazing exploration of the experience of an introvert and the anxieties of an emotional growth of boyhood. You get to see some of what is suggested in the book, but it's explored in a lot more depth in the movie. You get to see Max's frustration at home and the long journey that he took to where the wild things are, the time that he spends in that boat. But the real meat of the story is him there with the wild things. Each of these giant wild things is simultaneously monstrous and cuddly, and dangerous and loving and exciting and challenging. And each wild thing emphasizes sort of a different emotional component of any boy. There's the sort of Debbie Downer that draws the group down, and that quickly transforms into fear for everyone. That's fascinating to watch. And of course, the wild thing that Max first befriends is the raging wild one, who on the inside is really the lover of them all, the one who wants them to be together. And as Max tames these wild things and befriends them, they make him their king, until together they realize that he's no king at all. He's a little boy, and he doesn't have the power to make everything all right for everyone. Max has a tremendous journey to where the wild things are, and I believe that we need to follow his lead. If we're going to learn anything about the world or about ourselves, we're called to take a risk and go outside of our comfort zone. Beyond a great description of boyhood, the story of where the wild things are melds this journey out to the wilderness with the journey inward to the depths of our heart. John Muir again invites us, try the mountain passes. They will kill care, save you from deadly apathy, and set you free. Even the sick should try these so-called dangerous passes, because for every unfortunate that they kill, they cure 1,000. He invites us into the wilderness and to journey inward to the depths of our heart. It's the same journey to where the wild things are. It's a bold claim that our salvation rests where the wild things are. I'm not the first one to suggest it, though. The religious leaders of nearly every tradition that we're familiar with have a pivotal moment that happens in the wilderness. Now, the most obvious example of that is the Israelites. We all know this. They wandered for 40 years in the desert after liberation from Egypt. It took 40 years for their community to come together, 40 years of wandering until they could find home. Another big wilderness story comes from Jesus. According to 3 of the Gospels, just after his baptism, Jesus fasted for 40 days, you notice a coincidence there, in the desert. Now, while he was there, Satan came and tempted him 3 times. There's a huge amount of material that's been written about this little moment in Jesus' life. It's actually a pretty big moment. But what I found most interesting was that biblical scholars, these are the smartest Bible people in the world, they disagree about what kind of story this is. Some of them think that it's supposed to be a historical account of what Jesus did, that he went and spent these 40 days fasting and was tempted there. Other scholars, though, see this wilderness story as a parable. Not a historical account at all, but a story created to make a moral point, sort of like the Good Samaritan. He could have just been telling the story as an illustration of the experience of digging deep and grappling with the temptations of the heart. Now, that debate between different scholars is what's so interesting to me, because those 2 journeys to where the wild things are really the same journey. The journey out to the wilderness is inseparable from the inward journey to one's own depth, the journey to where the wild things are. And of course, there's the story of the journey of Buddha. He had to leave his home, his palace home, his rich home, to find enlightenment. He had to go into the wilderness. Finally, he came to a spot and sat down to meditate under a tree. "I won't leave until I get it," he said. And that's where it all came to him, under a tree. It wasn't a temple or a city. It wasn't from another human being. It had nothing to do with writing or music or art. The Buddha found truth and a saving message sitting under a tree. He didn't even know what he was looking for when his journey began. The Buddha knew that he wasn't going to learn what he needed to learn sitting at home. His heart wasn't going to grow as long as it was caged by the social restrictions of the palace. And eventually his life changed as he sat alone under a tree. Now, one of the many things that the Buddha learned sitting under that tree was how to journey to where the wild things are in our hearts. In a lot of ways, Buddhism gives us an instruction manual for going to where the wild things are within during meditation practices. Now, there's this gross misunderstanding about Buddhism. People think that Buddhism is for people with peaceful minds who easily sit in meditation for extended periods of time. But that's like saying going to the gym is for people who are fit. You don't start working out because you're in shape, and you don't start Buddhist meditation because you feel so happy and peaceful all the time. It's a discipline that takes a lot of practice. And eventually, peace is one of the many potential benefits. Now, the purpose of meditation is to be in the present moment and to calm down the rapid cycling thoughts that we all experience. And it's strangely much more difficult than it sounds or first appears. After just a few minutes of silence, your mind goes in all sorts of crazy directions, wondering, what's for dinner? What time is it? Am I doing this right? Did I pick up the dry cleaning? In meditation, you learn, though, to recognize each one of those thoughts as it comes into your consciousness and to let it pass by, just like you would notice a cloud in the sky. There's no forcing it out of the picture, and there's no wall that you can build tall enough to keep out that random thought cloud as it drifts in. The best thing you can do is just notice the thought cloud for what it is and know that it will pass. Eventually, as you get more skilled at noticing random thought clouds and letting them drift away, your mind becomes a little clearer and more peaceful. It's incredibly simple but incredibly powerful. Now, what does that have to do with wild things? Buddhism extends far beyond the practice of sitting in meditation. Now, meditation is important, but it's just practice for the rest of life. It trains us to respond to the wild things when they arise throughout the day. After practicing meditation, Buddhism prepares us to acknowledge those feelings of happiness or hatred, of anger or jealousy or passion, and not guard against them, but to just notice them and let them pass on their way. This is what's so strikingly different about Buddhism. Most religious traditions encourage us to keep a vigilant guard against ill feelings, to keep our attentions focused on what's holy, to suppress feelings of hatred, of anger, or of jealousy. They teach us to be like that little boy Max, who stood up to the wild things and yelled at them, "Be still!" It worked for Max, momentarily. But the wild things, I have learned, are more like clouds in life. It takes practice, and the best way to deal with them is to notice them for what they are and let them go on their way. Notice the wildness of happiness or hatred, of anger or jealousy or passion. Buddhism invites us to acknowledge those wild things. Just notice them and give them the freedom to pass on their way. Our salvation is where the wild things are. Now, at the core of our Unitarian Universalist faith is a belief in the goodness of people. You hear it from me literally every week about the inherent worth and dignity of every person, that every soul is sacred. I talked about it last week with reproductive freedom. We UUs believe that every soul is sacred and worthy. We believe that our bodies are good and not sinful. Our bodies are not dirty, distracting, or irrelevant. They're beautiful. They teach us about our world, and they connect us with one another. This goodness doesn't depend on taming or caging the wild things. For a lot of Unitarian history and still today, we think that our goodness depends on ability to tame our animal instincts, or ability to be more logical, to rise above those emotional selves. I want to challenge that inclination to conquer the wild things, because the wild things are what make us alive. They're part of the magic of being beautifully complicated human animals that we are. If we truly believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, let us have the courage to journey with Max to where the wild things are within, to meet them, to spend some time with them, and to learn from them, and know that we can always get in that boat and go back home. Our salvation depends on it. Our salvation depends on protecting space for wild things to flourish in the oceans and streams and mountains and valleys. Quite literally, as a human species, our survival depends on allowing the wild things, the creatures of the earth, to flourish with rich, complicated lives beyond understanding. Because the freedom that they need as creatures is the same freedom that we need, to live and breathe and run and grow and howl at the moon on occasion when necessary. So let us go out. Let us turn within. Let us go where the wild things are. Let us deepen our commitment to preserve space for the wild things, because our salvation depends on it. Amen.